Welcome, everyone. You're watching In the Crosshairs, and I'm your host, Raquel Okyay. And my special guest today is Shayna Lopez-Rivas, and I'm so excited to have you on. First of all, you're my first female guest.
Woo! That's fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And also, I think you have an extraordinary story, and why I wanted you to tell your story to the public is because I think it's very encouraging for women, especially. You were put in a position where you needed to defend yourself, and it didn't work out too well for you, and I know it's difficult to talk about, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, because I think the benefit of that, Shayna, is that women like yourself and myself who are in vulnerable positions, most criminals are, statistics show, are men, and it is true that men can very easily overpower women. So I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then go ahead and go into your story as to how you became involved as a gun rights activist.
Okay. So as you said,
I put a lot of questions, and I apologize for that. I asked 3 questions, and they're like, oh. So
yes, no problem.
One at a time.
Okay. Well, I guess quick introduction. I am 23. I just graduated from Florida State University with a bachelor's in criminology, so I am very well aware of the criminal statistics there, and that women are, unfortunately, well, I would like to believe that women are completely equal to men. Physically, we are not, and you know, and you can't really best genetics there, which is why part of the reason why that I ended up becoming a gun rights activist. The original reason was because I was attacked on my university campus and I was raped. He had a knife, I had pepper spray. Like you said, it did not work out for me.
Right. Terrible situation. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's all right. I lived through it, which, you know, I'm grateful for every day. And it, like I said, it was because of that I ended up, a friend basically was like, come out to the gun range with me and learn how to shoot a gun. Like, if you never pick up a gun ever again, that's fine, but at least you'll have gun safety and you'll know what to do if you ever come across a situation in which, you know, there's a gun in the room or something like that. She was very sneaky about it, because I was like I said, I was actually, I didn't say this. I grew up in an anti-gun, very liberal household. My mom was a trauma nurse. She only saw the bad side of guns. So
and from New Jersey, up north like me.
Yeah, exactly. From New Jersey. So basically, I mean, my only knowledge of guns was Hollywood, and obviously Hollywood is not very accurate.
No, they're not. In fact, I think they should take courses from the NRA, because they like misfunction. You know, they're
Yes.
a story involving firearms, and they're simply not using, you know, the basic rules that, you know, some of us might use, or who are trained. And it's really unfortunate, because it portrays, you know, fake. It's fake news. I mean, it's not news, but it's just it's a fake dramatization. Firearms, you know, like as you know, you never put your finger on the trigger unless you have someone, you know, something in the target. You know, that's sort of like a number 1 rule, and then you have all the Hollywood movie stars with their finger on the trigger. You know?
Oh, I know. And they're portraying like cops, or like they're in the military, and you're just like, no cop would put their finger on the trigger in that situation.
Exactly.
Like, oh, exactly. It bothers me. My boyfriend actually hates that, because I'm always like pointing it out, and he's like, Shayna, just watch the movie. I can't. I have to point it out.
I do too.
But yeah, so like I said, my whole world with firearms was movies, Hollywood. And so she dragged me out to the range, and I fired a Glock 17, and it was by far, like, the moment I shot that gun, I knew with 100% fact, I was like, if I had this on me, I would never have been raped. Like, I just knew it. And so I empowered myself, and I went and I got more firearms training and education, not just in firearms, but also in situational awareness, which I think is almost as important, if not more important, than firearms training, because situational awareness, I mean, it'll help you if you have a gun, and it will help you if you don't have a gun, because you're in a gun-free zone or something like that, of which my campus was. So after that, like I said, I trained with the firearm, and then in August 2015, that summer, I was looking for like gun groups on campus that I could kind of join, and I found a group that advocated for campus carry, and I was like, hey, I mean, now that I have this gun, like, yeah, I would love to be able to eventually, at the time I was 20, so I couldn't get a concealed carry permit, but eventually I would like to carry, and I would like to carry on campus. Like, this is where I was attacked. It would make me safer. And so I started advocating for campus carry, and then it's been, I don't want to say it's uphill or downhill, because it's not, I mean, I guess it's uphill. It's a little bit challenging, especially in Florida, where we have a almost completely Republican legislature. I mean, we have the majority, and yet not only have we not been able to pass good gun bills, but a really terrible gun bill and gun control legislation was just passed. So it's been
right, and I think one of the restrictions really applies to you too, because what the Florida legislature determined was that we needed to reduce the age from 21 to 8. From 18 to 21, increase the age of which you can purchase a firearm. And I think that affects your situation entirely. What do you think about the idea that if you would have had the right, even though you weren't aware, or not that you weren't aware, but you were vulnerable, and you learned since then, not to make yourself vulnerable. What do you think about that new law? Because now, even if the law says that you can't carry. You can't use a firearm to protect yourself between the ages of 18 and 21. What do you think about that?
Oh, I mean, I was really upset with this law, and a lot of it was passed by Republicans, like I said, who ran on a platform for gun rights, and yet they passed this gun control legislation. And then they said, what they said was like, well, we had to compromise, we had to give up those rights so that way we could get armed teachers, and it's called the Guardian program, which they tried to pass. But what they didn't say was that the law only provides for people that aren't in full-time contact with students. So basically, your average teacher can't ever apply for it. It's basically coaches and like part-time staff.
Okay.
And then also only if they had prior law enforcement or military experience. Only if they go through a 144-hour course, which, by the way, in Florida, police only have to go through 40 hours for firearms training. And then only if the school board for that county will allow them to go through that training. So basically, nobody qualifies for this bill. Nobody would be even allowed to qualify. And so they gave up the rights of 18 to 21-year-olds that they basically gave up these rights for them to buy a firearm, because I mean, you couldn't buy a handgun, but you could at least buy a rifle. And I mean, that was a law that actually did impact me, even if it would have passed back in 2014, because I had a firearm, and I wouldn't have been able to have that in my home if that law had passed. Because, I mean, it didn't prohibit you from possessing it, but my mom would have never bought me a gun at that time because I hadn't fully convinced her of, my training or anything like at that point. And she wasn't very pro-gun. So basically, I mean, who would have bought me a gun except for myself? And how could I have owned one if I couldn't buy it? And so, yeah, I mean, like, at least... like at that time, having a firearm in my home gave me peace of mind in my home. If I wasn't safe anywhere else, like at least in my own home I was. And so to not have that access, I mean, when this law passed, I cried for the women that like that would end up becoming victims of violence, or who wanted to protect themselves and are now not able to because of this law. So
yeah, I agree with you on that. I think it is about choice. Oh, your video went out for a second.
sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I do think it's a matter of choice. So if you decide, and Larry Sharp said this in our interview last week, if you decide that you want to defend yourself through your words and your wit, that's your prerogative. That's what Larry Sharp said. I decide to defend myself. But if you decide, or I decide, to defend myself or yourself with firearms, that's basically our decision, because it's a God-given right. I mean, it's not, the government was never, set up to take these restrictions away from us. They were just affirmed in the Bill of Rights. So it is very important to get that message out there that as an 18-year-old emancipated woman, adult woman, you can vote, you can serve in the military. Taking away your choice to have a firearm, to purchase a firearm, I think discriminates against you and your Second Amendment right. So it's usually unfair. And the other thing is that they bring it out with the word safe. Everybody thinks safe. But really the record, the statistics show that it's just really the opposite. None of these gun laws actually keep us safe. What they do is penalize law-abiding citizens. They penalize law-abiding citizens who haven't done anything wrong. And I think a part of that, maybe, your mom or who wouldn't want you to have a firearm. Part of the problem is that they've been taught particularly up north, right? Because I understand that part. That we have been taught to look at the firearm as it's something bad. What would be your argument to the public? The firearm isn't the bad guy, right? So stop making him the boogeyman, right? The firearm is not the boogeyman. It's the people who use it, because we all know many things are dangerous. You can give your child rat poisoning, and that would be child abuse, okay? But we don't make restrictions on rat poisoning because the laws are already set in place. People who use firearms inappropriately are already committing crimes that are already on the books. So to continue to restrict rightful gun owners, is really unfair, I think.
No, I don't disagree. And actually, like I said, at the time, I would not have been able to convince my mom to buy a gun for me. But now, that's like a completely different story 3 years later. And I've been able to, and this is the other thing too. I think that in reaching out across the aisle, I think it's more than just a conversation that needs to be had, especially in these like days and times where like there's a lot of divisiveness in the country, is that you really have to like reach across the aisle and say like, you know what, like come with me to the range, let's talk about safety. Let's if you never use it again, you never use it again. It's the same conversation my friend had with me after I was raped, was like, just come with me. And if you don't like it, you don't want to do it, like, gun safety, you have that experience, you're better apt to argue for gun control laws or whatever else you want to argue for, if that's the case. And I think that, because I think that once you bring a person out to the range and you're able to have like that conversation, you're able to teach them gun safety, you're able to show this is a tool, it doesn't go off by itself. This, like, a person has to be behind it for it to fire. And I think that these are a lot of concepts that people just don't understand, because there's just a general lack of education on firearms in the country. And like I said, I was the person that my education on firearms was Hollywood, and I was the norm. So,
right.
It's that conversation that needs to be had. But I think that it's more than just a conversation, because a person you can't really understand. I feel like I guess you could explain it well enough, but I don't think that a person really understands like the concepts that we are trying to explain from a firearm safety perspective and from a political perspective for gun rights until they themselves have like fired a gun in a safe environment where like there's that control over it. So
yeah, that is a great idea. I think you're right. It's more than just a discussion, as you were saying. It really sometimes turns into taking the person, bringing them into the range, showing them the way it works, and it's a lot of fun. What's your favorite part of guns? Like, what's your cup of tea? Do you like target shooting? Do you like hunting? What's your cup of tea when it comes to firearms?
I mean, so the range that I go to, my boyfriend is currently the manager of, it's an outdoor range. So I basically can go there like unlimited amounts of time. And I really do enjoy target shooting. I think that that's probably the most fun I have is target shooting, but that range also has like 400 acres for hunting and everything else. So I also enjoy that. But at the same time, though, I'm a little impatient, and hunting requires like an insane amount of patience. And also, I don't like waking up that early. I'd like to say that I'm a very experienced hunter. My few times that I've actually gotten up have not been very productive. But so I would say that target shooting was probably my favorite aspect, but that's also because target shooting, I can practice for self-defense scenarios, and you can go through a whole range of things that an exercise is just so that but it's fun to do as well, but it is also very serious in the sense of like, that I always think of it as like, maybe this is a day where I learned something and I practice it and it ingrains in my memory, and like that saves my life or somebody else's life one day. So
I want to add that's very good. I love it. I love shooting. I wish I had more time to go ahead and do some target shooting. And I also like the combat training, which is a lot of fun. It's very hard work, but it's, I think it's good for the soul. I mean, I really enjoy it. And I think a lot of men who might be afraid to get involved, I think they really, truly like it. I was wondering, since you have come from New Jersey, some of your friends, you came to Florida State to study criminal justice. I'm a criminal justice background as well. Do your friends in New Jersey say, "Hey, Shayna, what are you doing? Why are you a gun advocate? Where did you come from?"
My grandparents. Yes. My friends, I think, are more of the ones that are still up there, are more of I don't really, if they either don't have a strong opinion on guns, or they have come around to my side of things. I think that, and like I said, I think that's part of the conversation that needs to be had. It's a lot easier to have a conversation with a friend and things not get ugly, and people be like, okay, like, let me look into this for myself. Let me think for myself. It's a lot harder for my friends in New Jersey, though, because I can't, I'm not up there. I can't be like, let's go to the range. And then even when I am up there where I could go to the range, I'm sorry, but New Jersey ranges are, they're, I feel like, a little bit inadequate compared to like my experience with ranges in the South. I'm just saying.
Well, New Jersey happens to have really terrible gun control laws. Yeah. I would even rank them number one in the states, with New York closely behind California as well, Illinois too. I mean, there's plenty of states with gun control laws, heavy gun control laws, but in the state of New Jersey, I see it as no one can have a gun, can buy a gun, with some exceptions. So there are very heavy exceptions. I mean, heavy gun control laws, whereas if you had your firearm, and you have to have, specifics, the ammo away from the firearm, and if you have your firearm and you have to have it in your trunk, and you're just simply on your way to the range in New Jersey, you wanted to stop and get some milk you're on your way home from the range even. You want to get some milk for home, you stopped at the store, you can be arrested.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed to make any side, stops at all. You have to go literally, if you can even get permission to buy a gun, or even it's so tightly contained. And what happens is, I think, it makes New Jerseyans literally sitting ducks, and they don't even know it. So you have people, very limited amount of people who can actually carry firearms, and when they do, simply not enough. I feel safer knowing in the state of Florida, half of our residents have concealed carry permits. Mm-hmm. Now, I might not be carrying, but I'm out in the public, and I feel safe knowing that somebody likely is.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me safe. So, the point I'm trying to get to the public is that if you don't feel comfortable with the firearm, if you don't want to become involved with training and learning or purchasing a firearm, that's your prerogative. You can choose to defend yourself any way you want to. However, you cannot take our right away, because it's our choice. It's a freedom. It's a God-given right. It's a freedom to decide how I choose to defend myself. So I try to take that argument to the public, in that, hey, you don't want to carry a gun, that's fine, but feel safe, because there are those out there who are responsible, law-abiding citizens, and if something were to happen, which, as you know, none of us are, these things happen. And at least I feel protected knowing somebody is out there. I know when I'm a New Yorker, as I said, and I used to write about a lot of electoral politics, but I was a city girl, so I wasn't really into the 2A topic. Mm-hmm. I wrote a lot about politics, but not so much 2A. And then I had gotten a call from the senior editor at Neil McCabe at Human Events, a conservative news journal from DC. And they came across my blog, and they liked it. They liked how I wrote. And they asked me, Neil asked me, will you write about Second Amendment for our Guns and Patriots newsletter? And my initial reaction was yes. Right. Job,
yeah.
I put him on mute, and I was like, ah!
Yes.
Human Events called me. Ah! So it was like one of my happiest days of my life. And then after I accepted, I hung up the phone. I was like, ugh, I gotta figure out what's going on with Second Amendment.
Yes.
It was a learning experience, and I know you said the same thing, about kind of being in that brainwashed mode, thinking that guns, being from the Northeast, and thinking that guns were something bad. I kind of had that same impression, even though I was a conservative writer, I still had that same impression, like, no, I'm not really around guns, and so on. But once I became involved and really started, studying the issue, it's all sort of like, wow, I should have known this a long time ago. This is really, it's really factually based. So I'm so excited to see so many young people and the millenniums get involved in gun rights. It's very important. And I wanted to ask you one more question, Shayna. Mm-hmm. In your activism in the state of Florida, then, what are your plans to continue spreading your message?
Well, right now I am actually a little bit going nationwide. I'm going to be a part of the DC project, which is it's essentially a 1 week spent in DC with 50 other women from 50 states. I'm going to be representing Florida, and nice. And it's going to be basically we go to our representatives and our senators, and we talk to them about gun safety and firearms and gun rights, and I'm going to be sharing my story, obviously, and hopefully maybe I can convince a couple representatives, or maybe our senators are Rubio and Nelson, a Republican and a Democrat. I don't think I'm going to convince the Democrat, but I can maybe convince Rubio to not vote in any gun control legislation, which I have a little bit of concerns with.
Right.
But you know,
well, Rubio is going to
it'll
be,
be fun.
isn't he? He's term limited out, and for U.S. Senate this year, and
Governor Scott is term limited.
Scott
I
is
don't
running
think Rubio
for US
is.
Senate. He's running for U.S. Senate at this point. Has he announced? I think
Yeah,
so.
Scott has announced.
What do you think about Scott? Do you think he's pro-gun or anti?
Oh, I don't care what he was before. I can tell you right now that he signed into legislation that 18 to 21-year-old law, and I was like, nope. Like, from this point forward, you are not getting a single vote from me. I don't care if you're the Republican. Like, I'll vote Libertarian. I can't vote for the Democrat, but I will vote Libertarian. Like, I will not vote for Scott. And so hopefully he doesn't get the primary. He probably will. But, you know, I can't vote for him, knowing that, you know, like, if you're for us, you're for us. If you're against us, you're against us. But there is no in between.
Right. Yeah, I was really disappointed myself with the Republicans in the state legislature, because they did run on platforms, pro-gun platforms, because Florida really is a pro-gun state compared to some other states. And we absolutely were the leading state in concealed carry permits from the start. And as well, I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't have, you know, legal open carry. That was, in fact, all of the states in the union, we always had open carry. It was only over time that states started taking away open carry individually, not all the states. We did it in Florida back in 1986, and it was over, you know, some incident happened. Everyone reacted on emotion. And Janet Reno was, I think she was in the state legislature. She may have been the attorney general at the time. And there was a quick push. They did it really quickly, the similar way as they did in Parkland. And they passed this emotional gun control bill, you know, making open carry a crime. And with that, the legislature said, you know, the Republicans were like, okay, we'll do it, but we're going to come back next year, and we're going to revisit this topic, and we're going to, you know, have hearings, and we're going to, you know, debate it, you know, look at it entirely and make up a decision. That didn't happen, right? So they, you know, they like to say that so that they can push it in. Oh, we'll take it up next year, and then they never do. And that's exactly what happened here in Florida. What do you think you can do, Shayna? And I'd like you to take that to DC as well, as part of the problem that we have in Florida, because it doesn't seem like Florida should be in that category. Some states are. I mean, we have like 40-something states that have legal open carry, or they never created laws that took it away. But Florida, we're in that other category. And we never revisited the issue. What do you think about that? Do you think that's something, you know, we can promote?
I mean,
advocates?
It's not that I'm not trying to promote it, but I can tell you right now that with the state of this upcoming midterm election, that nothing is going to get done, because nothing ever really gets done before an election year. So these pre-sessions are like not going to have any gun bills. I almost guarantee it. And then after the midterms, we'll see who's in office. Because if it turns into a Democrat majority, obviously we're never going to see open carry or any pro-gun legislation. At that point, it would just be combating gun control legislation. But yeah, the problem right now is that it's getting stuck in certain committees because of the lovely representatives and senators, the state representatives and state senators from the Miami area, I would say, generally, pretty much the southeast Florida. And I mean, I still talk to my senators and my representatives, and there's a few of them that, I mean, Senator Stubbe, for example, in Florida, he from Sarasota area, he has been the one in the past to push, who basically he's the primary sponsor of gun rights bills, and then at least right now in the Senate, and there's a couple of people in the House of Representatives, but in general, I don't want to seem like I'm like being pessimistic about it, but like I said, right now, until the 2018 election happens and we find out like who's going to be representing us, there's not much that is going to happen, and so there's not much that we can do. And then, I mean, if we still hold that Republican majority, then hopefully what we can do is talk to those senators and representatives, push it through, and then I mean, the people that really have the most power are the Senate President and the Speaker of the House, because they're the ones that assign it to committees, and those committees are the ones that they make up, and so they know whether it's going to pass or fail. And they'll put it through the committees that they won't pass it if they want that bill to fail. So really, it's kind of going to be watching who's going to be, you know, in charge of that, and how the committees are going to be formed after this election, and then from there, going on and seeing like what we can do and what bills we can push, especially in regards to open carry. Right now, I don't see a full open carry bill being passed, but I know that, which I mean is disappointing. But I do know that I think that what could pass is at least accidental open carry, basically, because there was a it was basically thrown out of the appellate court, the state Supreme Court, and then it hasn't been heard by the U.S. Yes, the Norman case, where a black man was walking down the street, his legally owned concealed carry gun peeked out from behind his shirt. He got slammed to the ground out of nowhere by police officers, arrested for open carrying, and I mean, it was completely an accident. And so basically the state law right now is kind of like iffy, and it gives law enforcement officers a great degree of I can't think of the word, but it basically allows officers to decide whether or not it's illegal or legal, which should never happen. It should not be in the officer's hands to decide that. But so that law.
Yeah. So, and in fact, it was also incorporated in the most recent law, which was that police officers, including that, you know, if they feel the person is incompetent, you know, they're making sort of like mental decisions about a potential perpetrator that they're not really qualified to make. It gives them a lot of power, that they did, more power than they didn't have it. And I understood that, you know, one of the good things that did come out of Norman was that the state prosecutors were to stop, and I know it got cut off at the Supreme Court level, but it was sort of like a warning to the state prosecutors that, you know, prosecuting these accidental exposures, you know, is not keeping anybody safe. You know, I mean, once you're picked up, you know, put in jail for a firearm crime, ruins your life. You could lose your job, you lose your, you know, it's completely unfair. We want to, in fact, police officers, you know, they get into the business because they want to go catch the bad guys. They don't really want to go and catch the dude who's got an accidental, his firearm is accidentally showing. That's not actually open carry. They're not really doing anything illegal. So there has been, I understand, some pressure, at least, at the prosecutor level to not prosecute these cases of accidental exposure, which was something good, I think, that came out of Norman.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not the best, but it's kind of what we have. I mean, at this point, it really is determined by the local municipalities and the prosecutor's DA's office, whether or not to press charges, and they still have that decision-making power, which, again, I feel is unfair. But yeah, as far as open carry is concerned, I think that the only bill right now within the next couple of years that could pass would be an accidental open carry bill, which would make it, you know, if it is an accident and it's truly unintended, then you can't be arrested for it. But I don't, to be honest, I just don't see full open carry. I also, unfortunately, don't see campus carry or pretty much any.
That's my next question.
Pretty much any gun rights bills passing.
Because we also had, I know, you know, Florida Carry Inc., which I'm a member of. I know they had also some they were representing some persons, both in the Norman case, they represented Norman, and also they represented in some cases when it came to campus carry.
They did, they allowed it so that basically the courts did find that you could have a gun in your vehicle on campus. So basically for commuter students, because then if you couldn't, then it essentially infringed on your right outside of campus to have a firearm. But it's, I mean, they haven't taken up a lawsuit as far as like actual campus carry for concealed carry permit holders. At this point, I think that that would probably be the only, within the next few years, I think that a lawsuit would probably be the only way for campus carry to be allowed, basically go through the court system, because right now I just don't see that our legislature, I mean, basically in 2015 would have been our best chance, 2016 maybe, but 2015 would have been our best chance to get campus carry passed, and then it got stuck in a committee with former state senator, I love saying former, Diaz de la Portilla. He was on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Oh yeah, no, when he lost his election, like the 2016 election, I didn't care who won for president. Like at that point, I was looking for Miami, and I was like, he lost, and I like celebrated. I was like, this is the best day ever.
He was getting so he was like a Republican that came out, you know, support me, I'll support Second Amendment rights, and then he goes and, you know, does the opposite.
Oh yeah, yeah, and he was single-handedly, he single-handedly had the power to hear the bill in the committee, and then he was like, no, we're not going to hear it. And if it had been heard, even without his vote, it would have passed. And then if it passed his committee, it would have passed the Senate floor, and then at that point, Governor Scott would have signed it. But he blocked it from passing, and it was.
And the voters really stuck it to him.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few other issues, but I really like to think that like that was one of the main reasons, and I hope that when he thinks back, like if he ever wants to run for public office again, I hope he really thinks like I lost because I lied. Because essentially that's what they, and I get that politicians lie because for some reason that's a part of being a politician apparently. But like you cannot run on a platform and then turn around and basically stick it to that platform. Like you can't. If you're running on a 2A platform, if you're running on a pro-choice platform, like I don't care what platform you're running on, but like don't be a hypocrite. You know,
right,
like
yeah.
Don't be a hypocrite.
They do put you out. They've done that in New York after the SAFE Act, which is a gun control act passed in New York about 4 years ago. And a lot of, the Republicans had control of the state Senate, and that Republican could have prevented it from coming up for a vote, which was in a big rush in the middle of the night without any debate. Mm-hmm. And there was a number of Republicans in the state Senate who voted for the SAFE Act. A number of them got ousted. Boom! Oh. They were gone. It was like, I was so excited. But you're right. You know, when you're gonna, at least if you're going to promote something, whatever it is, in our case is Second Amendment, to go back on it, once, you know, we're not fooled. We're not like, oh, well, they must have did the right thing. You know, we're not like sitting around like, well, maybe. No, we're like, you know, you promised. And, you know, so I love it too. I love it when the voters really get out and act. It's all good stuff. I'm so glad that the state of Florida has you, and that you're going to DC on that. I wish on that, 10-day.
Oh, it's not 10 days. It's like Wednesday through Saturday or something like that.
Weekend thing, and you're going to be talking to the federal officials, so
yes,
Congress and stuff. That is just so neat. I really wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And I know you're going to do a great job, and it really is persuasive coming from a young woman like yourself, because you might be categorized as somebody who would be against guns, but because of your experiences and what you've had to go through, I think that it's very brave of you to come out in the open, and I just give you a lot of credit, and I really wish you the best of luck, Shayna.
Thank you.
And also, before we go, because we are coming down to the top of the hour, Before we go, I do want you to tell the audience how they can find you, how they can contact you, what's your website, and also if you can have the last word on the program, appreciate it.
Oh, okay. Well, like I said, thank you for having me on. And then as far as contacting me, I'm on Facebook, Shayna Lopez-Rivas, survivor, advocate, activist. I also have a website, shaynalopezrivas.com. And then you can find me on Facebook or that website, or Twitter, at Knoll for Justice. My Twitter is very super pro-gun oriented, so it's pretty much only guns. My Facebook is a little bit more of a mix for, I mean, it's obviously pro-gun rights, but I also try to throw in some things, especially for fellow survivors. I think that is important to kind of reach out to them and help them heal in ways that aren't just about firearms. But obviously I like educating people about firearms too. So yeah, that is that. And as far as the last word, I never usually get the last word, so I don't know what to say. You know, I really appreciate you having me on. I love talking about guns. I love being able to have the opportunity to advocate for women's empowerment through firearms and firearm safety, and hopefully, you know, maybe one woman just hears my story and decides she wants to protect herself with a firearm, and you know, something happens, but then she's able to defend herself rather than be in a situation that I was in, or in a situation that so many other women unfortunately find themselves in. So yeah.
That is awesome. I love your story. I want to talk to you for like 3 hours.
Thanks.
And I definitely want to have you back. So I want you to go to DC. I want you to keep doing everything that you're doing, which is absolutely fantastic. As you know, this is a male-dominated field.
Mm-hmm.
So as a woman, it's really welcoming, and it's very, very exciting for me to see other women involved. Because it's a you know, it's not a male issue only. It's really everyone's issue. So God bless you. I wish you the best, and you'll have to come back and update us on your endeavors.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Bye, Shayna. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too.